All right. Well, thank you for joining us on Twin Seeds. And I have Micheal Jaco today, and he is rejoining me because last week when we had our interview, I forgot to record it. So thank you for being back, Micheal. Anywho,
Good.
yeah,
That's cool. That's very good.
that's okay. We all make mistakes, but we learn from them though, right?
Absolutely. And you've learned. I see the recording light on. That's good.
That's That's right. So just reintroduce yourself. You're like a 35-year veteran, which national hero. Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about your history.
Thank you. Yeah, I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, and around 18, I went into the military. Always had a dream to be a Navy SEAL. So at 5 years old, so I finally realized that dream by going into the Navy. Became a hard hat diver at first, and then went over to the SEAL teams, went through the training, and eventually went to SEAL Team 6, got combat action, and started the Navy's first hand-to-hand program. I started to see over time, the different things that, we were able to tap into as far as our consciousness. First, I just thought, we're Navy SEALs. We're just like Superman, to make it through training. But there's actually a process that we would slip into that most people didn't understand. And that's how I eventually got to the Intuitive Warrior book. So after leaving the Navy SEAL teams, I started my own company, teaching other people these skills, and then went into the CIA. Realized another dream of mine, did that for 11 years. And now I'm teaching full time all the information that I've been, uncovering through all this incredible intuitive information that has come through to me. Remote viewing, remote influencing, past life information, all these different things, I think can really inform humanity and to a great level, and really accelerate us into what I think is coming is the Great Awakening.
Very good. I'm ready for it.
Yes, I think all of us are.
I think so, yeah.
Even those that don't know that they aren't.
True. Now, I took your remote healing course, which I thought was fantastic. And one thing that I loved about it is that it's straight to the point, and it's very beneficial, and you can actually feel a shift. So thank you for that.
Excellent, thank you.
Fantastic, yeah. So it's
feedback on that. It's I kind of developed it so that anyone could come into it from any level, and it'd be beneficial. So that's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I can definitely see that for sure. Yeah. Now, your other courses that you have, I noticed I just signed up for the past life today. So excited to start that. And you're having a special on that right now. So I'll put that link in the comments so anybody that's interested in that can check it out. But that's the past life. Tell us about that one.
That's I started into past lifetimes as a kid. I saw the movie Patton. I didn't even talk about this in the program, but I saw Patton as a kid. And it was cool because my parents let me stay up a little bit longer because it was a later show. And I think it was like 7 or 8, something like that. So the Patton movie with George C. Scott, and he talks about how he was Hannibal in a past lifetime at the Battle of Zama. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I just had this, I've been there. I totally connect with that. And I'd already had like, connections with Jesus and stuff like that. And so it'd be much, much later when I finally started to do like deeper work with this. I went to the Edgar Cayce Institute in Virginia Beach when I was still a Navy SEAL. And I'd already been having all these things happen to me, these intuitive moments, these, I was already starting to do a little bit of remote viewing. So it was pretty impressive. Going to the Edgar Cayce Institute and then doing research on past lifetimes that he had talked about. And so somebody there at the Institute told me about how they're all going to this one woman, Mary Roach. And I was like, wow, I've been looking for, someone to do my past lifetimes for a long time. And she sounds perfect. So I made an appointment with her, and she was like booked out for 2 months. And I'm like, I'm not going to see her because I'm leaving the area here pretty soon. It just the last day that I'm in town, she calls me and says, hey, I just had a cancellation. Can you come right now? And I'm like, sure. So I drove to her house and she gave me a past life reading. And it was amazing. She talked about how I had a lifetime with Jesus and a lot of other stuff, things that I'd already connected with, even as a little boy. As a little boy, just like I knew Jesus on a different level. So that kind of solidified it. So I, just to correlate that and triangulate that, I went to other intuitives, and without telling them anything that I'd heard from anyone else, they were like, you had a past lifetime with Jesus. And unless they're telling everybody, that they've had past lifetime with Jesus, but, eventually I actually did, later, much later, because you kind of, for me, I have to like be with that for a while. And at first it was like, oh, it was like, it's kind of
Yeah, I can't imagine what my thoughts would be or my feelings. Say, yeah, you had a lifetime was due. What?
Exactly. Yeah, I was just like that. I was like, whoa, not me. Who am I? So
That is great.
on a certain level, I was like, that rings true. So it like
Mm-hmm.
me really deeply. So I was with that for many years before I actually got past life regression. So I looked for same thing. I looked for a long time, and then I was led to this one woman in Charleston, South Carolina, which I love that little town. And she regressed me into the lifetime of Jesus. So it was pretty cool. And it wasn't until last year, where I was doing a reading. I was working with other people. I do one-on-one coaching as part of the things I do. And this person comes in, he said, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I never talk like this to anybody. He says, but Jesus told me that you're doing a good job. And I'm like, whoa.
Oh my gosh.
And then I just had a download, because I knew that I was a centurion and a tribune. I knew it. And it's kind of like one of those intuitions. You have that knowing, and but I could never find that historical character. So when he said that to me, I'm like, he's like, Zh. So I looked on the computer later, and I found that lifetime. So it was pretty amazing, to see that in a historical figure. So fantastic, all this information that comes through.
So how has your development of your past lives and finding out how has that helped you in your life?
It has really opened up a lot of doors. It basically informs me more about who I am in this life, because I see the pattern throughout other lifetimes, and I'm like, I've been working on this for a long time, but I think it's about time to like let this stuff go, or really focus on this and make it happen in my life. So I think over time, we keep working on things that we have issues with. And sometimes issues we have with other people too. So they'll keep coming into our lives until we work out whatever it is that we're trying to work out. And sometimes they, just like we're going through right now, a lot of negative in our lives. That's to impel us to, go to higher levels. So when
Absolutely.
I looked at, some of these past lifetimes, some of them were pretty traumatic. It's 111 right now, so that's kind of cool. So it's kind of impels you to go to these different states. So one of them that came up was when I was in Libya, and I was in Libya right after some of the people were killed there in Libya. You remember the Libya attack, Benghazi.
Right.
So I'd worked with those guys just months before, and they were killed, and they pulled me in. So when things go really bad, they send in me. So I actually have this ability, and people know about it, to remote influence and promote you and stuff like that. So most people don't want to admit it, that it's like real, but they're like, if I tell them, hey, this is what I see, they're like, okay, I don't understand what you're saying, but you're always right. So we're listening to you. We're not going to do this, or we'll look into this or whatever. So I went in there, and while I was there, anytime I'm in like a super high level combat area, my intuition is like in super high speed, superhero mode, so.
Why do you think that? You think you've trained yourself to be even more intuitive because it's life or death situation sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, that stands to reason, as when it's a life or death situation, you really push whatever skill it is that you have to a different level. And so that was the amazing thing that I was able to do with these skills. So I was just like in super intuitive mode. And so I got this idea that came to me. It was basically whispered into my ear that you were Richard III. And Richard III in history was, at that time, was not a very good character. They'd done a hit job on him, basically, Henry VII and Henry VIII, and, the Tudors, basically, because they, came in right after Richard III, after they killed him. So they needed to make him look bad. And they did that. Shakespeare, did a play, Richard III, and it's like, my horse, a horse for my kingdom, And so I have memories of all of that. And so that was coming through for me there. And I was like, no. And I ever since I was a little kid, I had memories of being on battlements, on castles and stuff like that as a king. And the same thing, it's like, who am I? That's ridiculous, to be a king in a lifetime, But so I hadn't discovered anything like that. So Richard III, I'm like, Richard, of all the kings I could have been, I'm Richard III. Are you kidding me? No, I refused that. That he was evil. And so it's like, I got another whisper, look at the castles, because I'm really into castles. I'm big time into history. And so I was always fascinated by castles, and it makes sense because I was a big castle builder in past lifetimes. So, but I didn't know that until I started to discover them through past lifetimes. So I'm looking at Richard III. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think so. This is around like December timeframe, November, December timeframe. And so I remember going home. I was living in Sedona at the time, which is a super high spiritual place. And I lived in a place that was like really beautiful. And it used to be Fred Astaire's dance partner, her home. So
Ginger Rogers?
Not Ginger Rogers is another one. I can't think of her name right now,
Gotcha.
but there's another one. She was like one of those triple threats. She was like a singer, dancer, and actress.
Oh.
She was super amazing and beautiful, beautiful home. I was so fortunate to live there. But really super good energy. It built a like a little shrine with a water fountain, and it moved it so there was like an energy vortex there. There's a lot of energy vortexes in Sedona.
Yeah.
So I'm building a treadmill that's actually right here, right in front of it. But as I'm building it, I felt like these penetrations happening, like swords were going into my body, and I like fell onto the as I'm building, I fell onto the treadmill, and I'm feeling these penetrations, these swords going into my body, one after another. I could feel each one of them, 11 of them, and I'm laying there in unbelievable pain, as you can probably imagine. And I'm like, okay, I was Richard III. And then the pain went away. It went away.
I give.
That was easy. The next day, they said that they discovered Richard III's body after it had been missing for over 500 years.
No.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? So I'm like, okay, that was real. That was real.
Oh, my gosh. That is so interesting.
It's fascinating. So what happens is when we have these, it not only is it good for us, but it actually releases things within the historical context. So that's why it's super important for us to have our own past life memories come through, so that we can unlock things that have happened. I was at the Battle of Gettysburg. This was actually the first lifetime that I found, and I found it with a guy that had found his past lifetimes in the Civil War. He helped me discover it. And so I was like drawn to Gettysburg, for many, many years. And then through his help, I was able to discover that I was Lewis Armistead. And all of the Lewis Armistead was hit in the left knee. My left kneecap was shattered. Lewis Armistead was hit in the shoulder. I had up to that point, I'd had all kind of problems with my shoulders and everything. Once I made that discovery, just like, the swords that were in my body as Richard III, all those problems went away. And, people that have done past life regressions and stuff like that. I love the work of Brian Weiss. Brian Weiss was basically a hypnotherapist to help people, go back into their current lifetimes to find blocks that they have for certain things. He didn't even believe in past life, so he didn't believe in it at all. And he was, I guess, regressing this one woman. She was at her wit's end. She was going to die. because she had some kind of problem with her throat, and she'd been all these doctors and no one could figure out what was going on with her. All the treatments they had, nothing helped her. So, last ditch efforts was like, I'll go to a hypnotherapist, maybe that'll help, So he regressed her. She went into a past lifetime where she was a cattle rustler and was hung. And once she made that discovery, no more problems. So it's the same thing for us whenever we make these past life discoveries. And I've helped several people do that over time. And it's just amazing how it works. It's one of the most exciting things that I do. So helping people find their past lifetimes is so liberating on many different levels. It's
Well,
incredible.
I'm starting tonight. Now I'm really excited. I've got high hopes now. There's no telling who I might be.
Oh yeah.
In the
So you're gonna
past.
love the regressions that are in there, and there's a life between life meditation in there. I just did that one last night when I just put it up, and it was like, whoa. I mean, even I, I do these meditations still, and I just get so much information. It's like, wow, it's incredible.
Cool. I can't wait. Yay. Do you think the past lives are actually, the parallel universe theory? Do you think it's parallel universes happening now at the same time? Or what do you think about the whole time concept?
Yeah, it took me a long time to get this concept about all time is like happen all at once. I'm like, no, so I'm, very analytical, linear thinker.
Right.
Most men are, especially being a special forces guy, we, like very disciplined, very focused. So it's kind of hard for me to get that outer concept. But once I started to do it, and I started to put my consciousness on these different, levels, so that I could do the remote viewing and remote influence and stuff like that, I started to pick up, time is not, because I would see stuff in the future. I would tell guys 1 week from the day, there's going to be an attack. It's going to be 2 guys in a truck. They're going to be close to where, our consulate is. They're going to blow it up. There's going to be another explosion from another group, and there's going to happen on this time frame a week from the day. And they're all like, what? And then it happened just like I described it. And there was even video of the guys that I described. I said 2 guys in a truck, a white truck. So they had a video of these guys crashing through this gate before they blew the truck up. And it showed 2 guys in a truck in a white truck, just like I described it. So it's like when you get that kind of, because I'd had many, because I was like, this is crazy. How can I be doing this? Show me something else, like we're Downey Thomases, so we have to be, shown over and over and again. So I'd had all these things, happen to me. First, it was like a day, then it was 2 days, and then it was multiple days ahead. And then it was like, I can see into the future as long as I want to, or into the past as far as I want to go back. So once you start to do that, you're like, yeah, time is not as we think of it. It's not linear. It's not happening. It's not, that is the past. Like we just had this conversation about, Richard III. That's not the past. It's like all happening at once. It's just to wrap your mind around. It's really difficult, but once you do, it opens up a lot of different things. So yeah, different timelines, different dimensions. I mean, yeah, it's all going on. It's fascinating once you get into it, because the scientists, the physicists, have been talking about it for years.
Absolutely, yeah. How deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
Yeah, and that's the quantum physics stuff. I love that, because I wanted to be a physicist when I was a little kid. So
You probably have been.
probably, you're right. Actually, in a future life, yeah, I don't know. That's.
You'll have a lot of knowledge going into it. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Well, I read something about when someone dies and they come back, they actually come back with the consciousness that they left the previous life with. So you think there's credence in that?
Yeah, there's definitely some of that going on. So we a lot of us, most of us, will come in with basically our consciousness from past lifetimes white, and there's a good reason for that, because if we focus on challenges and past lives and loves and monies and stuff like that, successes and defeats, it would just overwhelm us. So we come in with a slate clean. Now some kids still have these memories, and there's just tons of scientific information on that too, so that's fascinating. But eventually we get to the point where we're like, okay, we're going to continue on. We're going to like do what we came into this life to do. We're going to stop focusing on past stuff. So there is that too. So I don't really focus on the past lifetimes, because there was a time where I was like, oh, is this guy? And I really like that lifetime. I like being a Viking, or I like being a king, or but you focus on that, it takes away from your mission in this life. So once I started to understand, I'm like, okay, that's just giving me information. It's not really who I am anymore. It's like when you were, a 4-year-old, you're not that 4-year-old anymore. So
Right.
I'm not Richard III anymore. I'm not, whoever in a past lifetime anymore. So that just informed me of who I am now. So this soul development, keeps moving forward as we have these lifetimes. So on the other side, the life between lives, like you're going to learn, is basically where we go to find information about what we did in this current lifetime. So we'll do a life review where we'll actually see how we impacted someone. Like if we just randomly just said something to someone and we didn't think it was a big deal, but to them it changed their life, and maybe good or bad. Right. Now I've had a lot of people approach me when I was a BUDS instructor, and said, wow, you changed my life. It was like amazing what you did. And I know there were other people that it wasn't so good for them, so you can have this effect. And if you're willingly destroying somebody's life, that can have karmic effect coming into this life. And I think that maybe my kneecap got shit when it was shattered, because I had this one thing that I used to do to the BUDS students. It was called the Jaco lunge. So it was tough. So it like wrecked their body. So they would leap up in the air and come back down with their knee just barely above the ground. And some guys, would go into the sand, because I'd always do it on the sand, because I knew that they would fail. Physically, it would fail. But it was a good punishment for guys. And it's just the way that it is, human nature. I could tell you, hey, stay up for a week and do one physical activity after another, and don't go to sleep, and just leave, and you would only do it for like maybe a few hours, and you stop. But if I'm there to push you, I'm gonna push you into different levels of consciousness, different levels of physical abilities and so forth. But it has to be on a negative level, unfortunately. It's the way human consciousness is at some levels. For you,
what do you mean though? Back up a little bit. It has to be negative for consciousness. What do you mean by that?
Not always. Now, for instance, you're going to be doing this course, and I'm not going to be like standing over you, like, or you're going to do push-ups if you don't,
You might need to.
Call me up and I'll do it. I'm good at that. I guarantee you. But, pushing 10 times beyond your physical abilities, it's, you got to be pushed, you got to be, it's right. It has to be demand sometimes. And that's kind of like what we're going through right now with the coronavirus. We're being pushed. There's demands being met on our consciousness right now. So we're going to push beyond them. It's tough. It sucks right now, but because we're having this, on us, we're going to expand beyond it. So that's kind of what I would do as a BUDS instructor.
Gotcha.
So because I was expanding my own self to do really the impossible things that we did as SEALs, and it became like, wow, I can just focus my mind, and I can push my body. I can do these things. You learn that as a young, student, and so that carries on into the rest of your career. And the longer you're doing that career, the more efficient and the more proficient you get at it. And that's kind of what I teach in my courses, how to get people to that point very quickly, very efficiently, and proficiently. So it's if I hadn't gone through any of that, then I wouldn't have any of these skills now. The ability to instruct people on that level, to go beyond what's physically possible. So that's the negative reinforcement. Now, what happens after you go through these challenges in life you get to the point where like, well, I know how to self-motivate. I know how to take care of myself in a pandemic, you know. I know how to like, we get faced with these things over time. We're able to overcome them. We're able to adapt and overcome. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned as a SEAL and as a CIA security contractor in combat zones. You learn how to adapt. I am very observant, to the point where I push my senses into the other realms, actually pushing into, going beyond the time frames, going into dimensional, shifts, looking at demonic figures and, having an influence on them. So amazing types of stuff that started at that, getting wet and sandy, getting in the cold water. That was one of the biggest challenges that I had, overcoming the cold water, because growing up in South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, when I went to the beach, it was always the summertime.
Right.
And water was like 80 plus degrees. Well, I'm getting in water that's like in the 50s and the wind's blowing and it's dark. It was tough for me because I'm always lean as it is, but then because you're like, running all the time, you're like super, super lean. There was no body fat on me hardly at all. Right. And it was really, really tough for me to overcome the cold, but I learned how to do it. It was like either I learned how to overcome or I won't be a SEAL.
Absolutely. That's tough. I can't imagine.
And then I like just, I remember being in the water shivering because they isolated me because they're like, oh, weakness. Let's see how he does with this being away from the group, because the group is giving him support.
Right.
They put me in the water by myself and I'm like, it's not going to affect me. I'm just going to do it. So it's like the shivering stopped and I was like, oh, from now on, I know where to go. I know where to go in my conscious mind and how to do this. And then from that point, I was never a problem.
So you were kind of the Iceman before the Iceman.
Exactly.
Yeah. You were telling us about your knee. You had the karma with your knee.
Yeah. So what happened is I was on a boat. I was in charge of this one combat training mission that we're having. And it was, the guys had left from San Diego and flew all the way out to Virginia, and they were going to work with my old team, SEAL Team 6. So I was in charge of training, doing all this high speed stuff. And so they flew out. We had to use some boats from a different command that we're not used to working with. And the boat driver was not proficient. I learned the hard way later. So the guys were dropping in, and we had a lot of people on the water drop zone because they're jumping into the water. And they had just had a group that had jumped out, and they had taken them back, and they were supposed to come back and help us, but they blew us off, as we found out later, and didn't come back and help us. So we're running around on the drop zone, picking up chutes as fast as we could, so that another, what we call stick. So there was like 8 guys that went out, and then there was like 8 more that came out, and then another 8. So 3 different boats were coming out. So we were pulling up the chutes as fast as we could, and I'm directing. I was like, okay, go over there and get that. And the guy was like driving really slow, and I'm like, come on, pick it up. So I'm standing in the front, and there's a guy that I didn't realize was standing behind me, that it wasn't holding on to anything. So this guy like just hammered it. I'm like, what? I almost fell down. I'm like, what are you doing? And we got water. I was almost ready to turn around and say, hey, you need to slow down now. When we hit a chute in the water, so that the propeller hit that chute, and imagine a car hitting a brick wall. That's what it was like. So we went all stop. The guy behind me flew into me, and there's a gun mount right in front of me. So I just barely ducked, so it didn't kill me, but it hit my knee, hit it, and it shattered my knee into 5 pieces. So I'm like, oh, that hurts. I reached down, and I could feel my knee in pieces. And I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to hide that, and because I've been injured many times and just, gutted through it. So I'm like, felt a wave of dizziness hit me. So I rolled around, and I tried to lift my leg, and it wouldn't move, because you need your knee to like move your lower extremities and your elbows and your shoulders. And once they're broken, your collarbone, once those are broken, you just lose that limb. So I'm like, oh man. So I like picked it up and I sat down. I'm like about ready to pass out. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to pass out, because I'm in charge that'll ruin this mission. I worked so hard to have this happen. And then same thing when I got in that cold water, I just made that decision, and that fog of almost going unconscious went whoop. And I'm like, then I started saying, all right, you guys get over there, do that. Just started taking charge. And it was like the pain just went away. It was like non-existent. It was amazing. Of course, after they operated on it and, screwed it back together and wired it back together, it was pretty painful after that. But, I just went in that different state of consciousness, and I was like, what is that? What was that about? It really, it changed my life. So I went, I was going to be doing all these things in the SEAL teams. And even though, within a few months later I did the impossible, because they said I would never walk normal again. I was running. I basically did the SEAL physical readiness test and got outstanding, like I always do. So, you have these abilities to, go beyond the normal. But I was like, what is that? Because it changed my life. I was going to, get a platoon and do all this stuff, and go to Iraq and Afghanistan and everything, as a SEAL, still continuing. But I was like, they were like, no, you're not going to do that anymore. You're going to be behind the desk. And I'm like, well, then I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do something else. And they're like, no, you're not, because they're going to shut down. They're going to shut down so no one else can get out. So I got out just before they shut everybody down and started doing my own thing. So it was funny. So eventually, like I said, my first past life discovery was Louis Armistead, who was, had his kneecap shattered.
Right.
I was like, wow. So I'm going to give your audience something that's never been disclosed before by anyone. And I affirmed it through a psychic. Yes. So Louis Armistead was killed. So he survived, and they had him in a basically a shack on the battlefield. And I remember being injected. They injected malaria into me at such a high level that it killed me. And the reason why they did that is because I would have been a hero for the South. And they knew that. So they killed me. And
wow.
Yeah, crazy, right?
That is really interesting. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot more to that. But once I discovered that, because it was same thing, it was a past life block. So I had that injury again in this life to basically bring that realization to me again. And once I made that connection, all that released. And then I had more past life memories. And the same thing with Richard III. So once they found his body, after the next day, they're like, yeah, this is Richard III. I'm like, I just realized that was Richard III. So then all those blocks that I had to, all those king lifetimes just went, just came in. So all those blocks to those past lifetimes just rolled right in. It was amazing.
And you could just really just remember thoroughly after that, or?
Well, they just came through so fast, so much.
Wow.
It was amazing. And it's kind of the same thing with the past lifetime with Jesus, so I had those blocks and like, who am I to have been with Jesus? And then, once that one of my one-on-one coaching guys said, Jesus said, you're doing a great job, keep it up. And then it was like, because I had a block is like, who am I? And like I said, who am I? And I was like, oh, I have that connection, because I have, pictures of Jesus and my, paintings of him and all kind of stuff. I've read all kind of, obviously books on him and stuff like, channeled books. So information that basically gives us insights of who he really was and what he was really doing, not the stuff that it was basically taken out of the Bible, that's been hidden. So I was like always fascinated with like, why are we hearing secondhand, information about, Jesus' lifetime in the Bible? But once you start to really find out, you're like, whoa, that's stuff that really would enlighten humanity. And so we took it out.
We can't have that, Michael.
Absolutely. We have our past lifetime memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest misconception of Jesus is?
The crucifixion. So the crucifixion, basically, everyone's stuck on him being on the cross. So when he came down off the cross and he came back, came back from the dead, basically. He basically died, went to the other side, and came back. that's the biggest thing. That was like, unbelievable. And that's something that, we all have the possibility of doing. We can have that consciousness, because I have actually done that when I was in Iraq. I had basically an out of body experience, which I talk about in the Intuitive Warrior, where I'm basically floating out of my body. I'm like, I'm having an out of body experience. I've always read about this. Now I'm finally having one. And I was like, it came to my mind. They always say, look back down at your body so you know that you're having that out of body experience. So I look back down and I'm dead. Basically, there was an explosion. My body was like torn to shreds. And the trailer that I was in was like destroyed. I was like, wow, I'm dead. This is not an out of body experience. This is like I'm leaving, I'm going to the other side now, I guess. And it's like, I remember having this thought. I'm like, it's such a shame, because I'm really, doing some really good work right now. I think I can have a really major effect with humanity, with the way my consciousness is gone. And then I got this feeling, and then I looked up and there was Archangel Michael. And I was like, oh, it's unbelievably beautiful. And then he looked me in the eyes, and this love energy went in my eyes, and I saw a flash. And then I'm back in my body, and I'm like, I sat up, and there was a huge explosion off in the distance. I'm like, whoa. And then, of course, you have that, was that real? And
Yeah.
So I never seen anything Archangel Michael, and because that's kind of a Catholic thing, and I was a Baptist. And so I did the research. I remember seeing, and I was like, oh, that's Archangel Michael, So I saw that picture. I saw him. And then I did some research. I looked around, because there was brick all around where this trailer was. Of course, this trailer is made out of, tin or metal, whatever. And so like, what was a brick? That's weird. There's no brick anywhere around here. There's no brick, buildings or anything. So I remember walking by this wall that was separating our compound area from another area, and the mortar that was on it had fallen off, and it was brick. And I was like, wow. So the walls in the Middle East, basically, most of them are made of brick, and then they cover it. And I didn't know this, cover it with like a cement type thing, mortar. So I was like, so, another one of those things where you go, yeah, so that was real. That's not something I would have just dreamed up or anything. And it was very real, just like I'm talking to you right now in this physical realm, with complete consciousness. That's the way I felt, after leaving my body, my dead body, and going, oh, wow, that's a shame I'm dead, and then, having it back in the body. So I basically saw my death, and kind of like what we were talking about, in a timeline. So timelines are not, solid. They're just like, they're all fluid. So we can change our timeline. So if, like, for instance, before you or like for me, before I did the past life discovery for Richard III and started finding all these lifetimes as, kings and stuff like that really informed me to an unbelievable level. If I hadn't made that discovery, then my life would have been different, completely different. Would have been not as informed. Would have been, I wouldn't probably be talking to you right now. Probably wouldn't have taught any of these courses, or made any of these courses, or wrote my book or anything like that. So, those little things in time that really, change everything, can make a huge difference. And we all have those. So we all have those moments in time. And like for me, at first I'm like, I discount them. So I are used to. Now when I see that's one of those moments in time, now I'm like, okay, can I have I feel gratitude for it now, instead of going, who am I? So I've slowly started getting away from that. And when you do get away from, discounting them and dismissing them, like you have these experiences, like the phone rings, you're thinking about somebody, the phone rings, and it's like that person, you're like, oh, what a coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence. Come on. That energy of that thought came through. And I would do that. My wife and I would do this all the time. When I was overseas, I would think of something, and I would think of her, and eventually at some point I would call her, and she was like, I was just thinking about, this during this time frame. I was like, oh, that's what I was thinking about it. So we just started playing that game. We just started doing that telepathy thing. And even though I'm like thousands of miles away,
Right.
and multiple different time zones, she was still picking up on that stuff. So we do that all the time. I'll think of like when I was working in the casino several months ago, I would eat something. I was like, oh, I'm going to eat this today, because normally, especially if I'm doing a bodybuilding contest, I'm very strict on what I eat. But if I'm not, I would eat maybe some of the things they have on the menu, and I would I'd eat it, and she'd be back here, and she would fix that thing that I was eating. So you have that connection with people, and it's not coincidence. You start to understand that. And I can, if I'm connecting with someone on any kind of level, if I'm working with them, or we're trying to create something together, anything along those lines, then I'll start to read that person. And it's not just I'll read their body language or anything like that. I'm reading them telepathically. So, it's not that I'm trying to get in their head and, snoop or anything. It's just that if whatever we're working on, I will get that, and it'll happen, boom, just like that. And I started
That's wonderful.
I started noticing that when I was in the SEAL teams. We would do this thing with what we call as close quarter combat, where we're all real tight and we're working together. And some of the stuff I taught you guys in that course, where I had all you guys, get out and start, trying to read each other and then feel each other. So you get to the point where we make, motions with our hands, stop or move out, or, head motions, or eventually you get to the point you start to realize you're not even doing that anymore. And everybody's just going off at each other. And I would tell everybody, hey, we're getting telepathic. And they were like, no, we're not. And I'm like, oh, God, if you guys could get past that,
right,
we could get even further. Some guys would, but not many guys. So the guys that did were pretty cool. I remember one of the last times I was in Yemen, and it was before Yemen fell. So Yemen in the Middle East, I don't know if you're familiar with Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Iraq or Iran. So this little thing that's going on over there, Iran is trying to influence, the whole region. So Yemen was, at one time, it was, no one would go there. So it's like that thing I would tell you, send Mike, So no one wanted to go there because it was super dangerous. The special forces guys, the Army, the SEALs, all of them had pulled out because it was too dangerous, because they'd been attacked and stuff. So they weren't even there anymore. So they're like, me, one other guy who was former SEAL, and a couple of CIA case officers in this one home on this hilltop in Yemen, just us. And we're still gathering information. And they're like, we had this plan to, like, get on boats and head out and all kind of crazy stuff. Things went really bad, which they could have in any moment. So I'm in this environment, and I'm like, I'm telling everyone, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to send out this energies. It's going to be good. I can see into the future. We're gonna come back, and we're gonna take this place back. So sure enough, started sending more people in. We went from just the two of us to 15 people in this one compound. And the SEALs came back, and I even helped them come back. The Special Forces guys came back. My old team, SEAL Team 6, came back. So they all came back. So I'm like sending out these energies, and I knew they were going to start to send me to someplace else. And I told everybody, it's like, I'm going to leave now, and things are going to get bad. And they're all like, yeah, whatever, Mike. I'm like, you guys need to get sandbags. You need to put sandbags here, get ready for this. And so they're like, some guys had heard about my abilities, over the years, sort of like started bringing the sandbags in. So, yeah. So and we had all kind of other forces there that I can't mention, but it was I was telling everybody, and it's funny because this is the only time this ever happened. I was into making beer, uh, you know, brewing my own beer and stuff. And it was very, very good because it was used for trading purposes there, because in the Middle East, there's no alcohol. So a special forces guy, Army special forces guy came in. He had a big background like I did. And we're like, making beer one night. And he's like, not even looking at me. He's like, I have those abilities too. And I'm like, what? He's like, I know what you're saying is right. And, I'm going to make sure everything's safe here when you're gone. And I'm like, oh, okay. And sure enough, when I left, the basically Yemen fell, and that base fell and everything else.
Wow.
That guy being there was the difference between probably a lot of those guys getting killed and not getting killed. So, we get to the point where, all of us have these abilities. All of us can do it. And if you deny it, then you're right. But if you're open to it, then maybe, and I'm going to say maybe, if you're open to it, they will come. So that's the beauty of all these abilities, intuition, knowing things, prognostication, seeing things into the future, remote viewing, remote influencing. All these things are available to us, looking into our past lifetimes. So all of them are available to us. If you're open to it, it will come. It's kind of like, that one movie, Kevin Costner, build it, it will come.
That's right.
Yeah,
Now,
it's that way for us.
When you were younger, were your parents open to this, or was this something that's, because a lot of times it depends on how we were raised to where we're more open or not. How were your parents?
My mom was good to a certain extent. Like when I tried to show her the angels when I was a little kid, she didn't believe. And but she was very open-minded as far as like, if you believe that you can do something, then you can do it. And that always stuck with me. And it really made a difference in my life, going forward. So of anything that she left me, that was one of the most powerful things. But as far as like, the spiritual stuff, I kind of, that was on my own. That was the things I was attracted to. I went to church and stuff like that. She wasn't into that. My dad wasn't really into it. Although we went to church together as a family, they weren't really into it. You know what I mean? They just, everybody else was doing it, they were doing it.
Going through the motions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was just, for whatever reason, well, I know why, because of past life, development, soul development, and so forth. I was, and probably, as you'll find out in Life Between Lives, you basically make a life plan. Now, we have free will, doesn't mean like everything's written in stone. It's kind of like a tree. It's like has branches. I like this one big tree. It's in Charleston, South Carolina. It's called the angel tree. And it's this huge, amazing oak that's, several hundred years old. And the branches are so big, they like drape down across the ground. And I remember as a little kid climbing on that. And at one time they had to fence it off because people were like, desecrating and everything. So that was pretty sad. But they've since turned it into a National Historic Mark. And I went back there as an adult, probably maybe 8 years ago. And the connection I have with the tree was just absolutely amazing. After, climbing on as a little 4 and 5-year-old and then coming back, 40 years later, it was like, wow. And I remember my wife took a picture when I was, connecting with a tree. And it was like, it almost brings tears to my eyes. It's like, it was so fantastic. So having those connections, those spiritual connections, to the point where, you're at one with everything. And that's what, the masters all were trying to teach us, what Jesus was trying to teach us. These things that I do, you can do, and even greater. So, from John. And when I remember reading that, I was like, just like my mom would say, whatever you set your mind to, you can do. And I remember reading those passages from, the Bible, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do some incredible things someday. And, I started doing them. and I do them now, and they keep growing. They keep getting, even more and
Right.
more impressive to me as time goes on. And when they come, I just go, thank you. Thank you. I have gratitude. Attitude of gratitude is very important when you get these, because you're basically telling the universe that you want that. And if
Give me
you
more. Yeah.
give me more, and more will
Yeah.
come. Yes.
Yeah.
Ask and you shall receive. So these things that these masters have taught us over time, you know, we kind of dismiss. It's like, who am I? Who am I to have a lifetime with Jesus?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So once we get past that, we can just develop on levels that are just impossible to most people. But we all have that ability. We all have that potential. So even though, as you might look at my past and go, oh, you're a Navy SEAL, you had all that training, you can do all these things. Well, I had to focus myself and believe in myself and, make the effort. It just didn't come to me naturally. And that's what it is with everything in life. People think that in the law of attraction thing, all I have to do is just think about it, it's going to come to me. No, that's one aspect of it.
Right.
The other aspect is just staying focused on that thing that you want, and then moving towards it and allowing it to come. So if we just keep saying, I want this, you're telling the universe you want it, it's going to say, okay, I guess you want it. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
so I've learned that's another one of those key things in consciousness, that whatever you focus on, you can bring it into reality, but you can't just keep focusing on it. You have to focus on it and then get to work. Focus on it, get to work, and then once you get that little thing down, the things have just manifested for me at an incredible rates. And that's one of the greatest things that I try and teach people. Your consciousness, your thoughts are unbelievably powerful. These your imagination. Einstein said the imagination is one of the most powerful things there is. So when you start to understand that, and you realize that your imagination is not just because that's what I do when I remote view. It's like I let my imagination run. It's like, okay, go look at this past lifetime, and I want, just give me whatever it is. Or I want to remote view, into the future, and if there's any attacks coming, I want to know. And then I'm going to remote influence them. So there's all these different aspects of consciousness that we have available to us that might seem, and probably does to most people, as being, outside the realm of, normal. What is normal? It's normal.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah.
Normal is what you decide it's going to be.
Yeah.
So, if your friends say that's stupid and crazy, and you're with friends that are, not really making it, or lower consciousness, so forth, pick new friends. Just I remember this one guy that I was in the SEAL teams with. He's got his own rock group. He's like amazing. And he's like, he told me one time, he's like, I'm so frustrated because, my group, I don't seem to be going anywhere with them. I was like, pick a new group. And he's like, duh, yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever, like you're a beautiful soul. So it's like, it's great having a conversation with a fantastic, soul that has kind of same mindset that you do. It helps you expand. Just having the conversation helps me expand. So, that's one of the things I love about teaching, because the teacher often learns more than the student. So when I teach this information, I get feedback from people. I'm like, oh, wow, that really was good. Or, oh, I need to fix that, so, or I need to be more specific about certain things. So, because people would go through my courses and were like, Mike, your information is amazing, but it's too much. It's just overwhelming. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'll just, fine tune it, and then I'll break it up into all these different courses, and then it's just worked out pretty good. So it was good to see that and hear that, and, experience that from people. And that's kind of what I do, just help people expand their consciousness, and it just expands mine at the same time.
One thing that I remember you saying in a talk that you were doing is that everything that you learn, you try to learn it in the way that you can teach it.
Yeah, because that really impels you to, you know, learn it on a different level. So I remember going to all these shooting schools and stuff like that, and I got really proficient at shooting. With I can pick up any weapon, and within a matter of minutes or less, I can be expert with that weapon. Even if that weapon is not sighted incorrectly, I'll have it, you know, right on the bullseye very quickly. You know, even if I have to shoot over here to make you go over here, you know. So
That's pretty bad.
yeah, well, no, that's an extreme, but you know, it's a little micro
Yeah.
skills where, you know, that's a little bit off right there. So I just need to have that little micro here, you know, at this side, and just down here, and this right where I want it. So, I mean, I could with an M60 machine gun. Most people are like, you know, I can like single shoot it, and most people are like, how do you do that? You know, it's like
Right.
it's very rare for someone to have that kind of trigger control. But I can have, you know, single shot on a machine gun, and I can write my name with it. So it's
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty amazing how good you can get. And it's just like anything else. If you spend, you know, thousands and thousands of hours, you know, shooting or doing whatever, you know, knitting or, you know, playing a guitar, whatever, you're going to get extremely proficient and very good at it. So that's what I did with shooting. So, but I did it for my own you know, shooting abilities, you know, expert, you know, level. So I remember going to Australia. I was working with Australian SAS Special Air Squadron, and they were like, there's always a competition between special forces groups, you know, whether it's in the U.S. or whether it's another country. So there's, you know, and it's usually friendly, but sometimes it can be a little bit, you know, sticky, you know, because they really want to win and they don't like not to win. But the Aussies are like us. They just love a good challenge. They love to, like, you know, kid around and stuff like that. So had a lot of fun with those guys. So we're going through what we call a kill house. And a kill house is basically a house that's made up so you can go in and shoot in that house, live bullets. And there's targets they put in there, and they'll have lights, and some rooms will be very dark, and some will be like, you know, strobe lights and, you know, loud music and all kind of crazy stuff to throw you off a little bit, you know, make it more difficult for you to focus. So I was there with another guy from SEAL Team 6. And SEAL Team 6 is like the ultimate SEAL team. It's like the creme de la creme of the SEAL teams, and everybody's handpicked to go there. And I believe that I was at the SEAL team at SEAL Team 6, because it's broken into like squadrons. So there's 4 squadrons now, I believe, and at the time there's 3. So my squadron and then my bow crew is like, you know, badass. You know, you get these little competition things. So there was another guy and another element, and then another bow crew. I'd never shot with him before, even though we're in the same team. You know, we have shooting partners, and you basically shoot with that person all the time. So I'd never shot with him before. And so they're like, they pair us up, they give us handguns that we'd never shot with before. And they were like a Browning 9mm. And we're used to shooting with Berettas at the time. Eventually, I think we went to 6 Sauer. And so they're like, okay, and they're laughing. They're like, they set up the house for us, and they think they're gonna, like, you know, have one over on us. And so we're like, okay, you know, so you ready? Yeah, ready. So we went in, you know, tore through the house, you know, did our shooting, how we're taught to shoot, and, you know, hit the targets, you know, perfect. And their targets are set up so they're difficult to hit. Sometimes they're like, you'll have a target where the terrorist, all you can see is like an eyeball, and they'll have a gun at a hostage face. So all you get this figure of a hostage, and you have a gun, and the terrorist is like peeking one eye around the hostage's face, kind of like Bin Laden did when he looked around the corner with his weapon and he got that part of his eye blown away. So not to get off track, but anyway, I was there, and I did the remote view on Bin Laden and saw his evil demon, and I sent influencing love energy.
Right.
Eventually we got him, my old team, this team that I'm talking about right now. So we went through the house, we shot, and we come out, we didn't know how we did, you know, and we come out, and their faces before we went in, they're all like this, and when they come out, they're like, we're like, what, did we screw up? And they're like, you guys just did better than any of us have ever done in our own house. And we're like, yeah, and we did it with guns we never shot with before. They're like, you guys teach us how to shoot. And I'm like, oh, I've never, taught anybody how to shoot. I can shoot really good, but I've never taught anybody how to shoot. So fortunately, my partner, before he came to SEAL Team 6, he'd gone to a lot of shooting schools as well, and had been part of the instructor staff at his old SEAL team. So he was able to show those guys how to shoot. And I'm like, well, this is, like, I, tear out the bullseye, and they're like, well, how'd you do that? And I'm like, point it and shoot,
Right.
So I learned. From that point on, I'm like, okay, from here on out, I'm going to learn stuff as if I'm going to have to teach someone.
Mm-hmm.
And that has basically led to, the courses that I'm teaching now. And eventually I went back and I was a BUDS instructor, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL training, where I was the head enlisted guy, the head instructor, and so forth. So I learned how to teach, and that was good too. So I went through a month-long instructor course and eventually became a master training specialist. Learned how to design courses and teach Navy SEALs, which you can teach a Navy SEAL. It's you've come a long way, because there's guys are like, you have alpha males, which basically I know what I know, and you can't teach me anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can teach you some things. So you have to learn how to deal with people like that, and the average person is like easy. So it's learning how to teach in that environment was amazing. It was huge. It was good.
It's probably a good mindset too, because I've always heard that unless you can explain something easily to someone else, you really don't know the concept. That's how you know you have it, is when you can teach it to someone else or explain it simply.
Exactly. And so that's what I try to do with everything. So if I'm going to, talk about something, if I'm going to relay any kind of information, then I want to have that information on a level that's like 4 to 5 times what I'm teaching. And so you're thinking maybe like the past life stuff you're teaching is like 4 or 5. Yeah, it's like maybe like 100 times. So
Wow.
it's the stuff that I have is unbelievably deep, because I spent, just on the past life stuff, probably 50 years of my life researching past life information, and spending tens of thousands of dollars going to psychics and past life regressionists,
Right.
and so forth. So, I did a lot of work on it. And so I've gotten to the level where, I'm just at a level where, I want to share this information with people. It's just so valuable. And so how do I do it? And then I just like started breaking it down. And what I do is like what you see right now in the course is like, there's 3 courses of the 5 that I'm going to offer. So when I do a course, then I like sit back. I'm like, okay, what's next? So that's why I offer it right now. All my courses, I usually offer my courses at like half discount in the beginning. So a lot of the people that follow me can, get a good deal. But also because I'm building that course and I'm kind of getting feedback, I don't even need people to tell me, what they're getting. So I can feel when people go in, and it's like, if it's right, and then what is needed next. So that intuitive information comes through to me. So that's one of the reasons why I like to give it at a discount. So people will come in, oh, it's a good deal. Yeah. And then they start to learn. I'm like, and I feel, okay, this is what I need to teach next. So you doing the course is going to be, you're getting a good deal, but also it helps, like the teacher learns more than the student. So I'm going to get that, whether you give it to me for real, this format, where you're saying, hey, Mike, you should focus on this. This is really good, but this ain't so good. But I'm already getting that. You don't even need to tell me. So I'm getting that on a certain level. So that's why I kind of like, I'll do it and I'll sit on it for a little bit, because there's other courses that I have that still need material in them. Like the remote influencing course that I have, it only has two courses that I'm like, okay, what's coming? And it's like, not yet. Okay, now tomorrow I'm ready to do the next one for that one. So it's also, like I said, a learning process for me. And it's as a master, level teacher and instructor, I'm at even higher level where I pull in information from the universe and try and, you know, make it on a like not just this analytical physical level, but also on a dimensional level. So you're getting a lot more from it, and that's the way it should be. You know, if you look at all the master teachers, you can see the teachings from Jesus, and they'll be you know, at a certain level for, you know, someone that's super basic, but it'll also have information within that same passage that someone on a super advanced level will get as well. So that's kind of what I want to do, you know, with the courses that I teach. So someone,
And it sounds like they just kind of build on each other.
yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, a lot of people say they go back and they do the stuff over and over again. I have many people that are doing like my foundational course, the Unleashing Intuition Secrets course, and they go back and they do it over and over and over again to get more information. It's kind of like when you read a book that's really good and you go back and like,
Yes.
you read it like maybe a year or two later and like, I don't even remember this passage. This is great,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
because you have developed. So that information is designed for you to develop with it and then come back and get more information from it. So that's why I give it away for life, you know. So you get that, you buy the course, you have it for life, because you're going to want to come back and get more information from it.
So what exact courses do you have, each one?
So I have the Unleashing Intuition Secrets course, which is basically a foundational course.
Mm-hmm.
And I say foundational, you know, just like I said, that some people are like, Mike, your stuff is like too much, you know. It's like, it's that course that's too much. So it's packed with everything. So it's like pretty much a little bit of everything. But when I say a little bit of everything, it's on a level that most people are like way over their heads. So they'll look at it.
I think that's the one that I thought I was purchasing, but I ended up, it was the remote healing. So that's something totally different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the remote viewing is, I really wanted that to be like the foundational course for all the remote stuff. But
Okay.
like I said, the remote healing, because of the time frame we're in right now, I wanted the remote healing to be for anyone to come in and get information from that. A lot of people that are like not into this stuff at all have gotten that and done really well with it. So yeah, the remote influencing, or not remote, but the Unleashing Intuition Secrets is basically my course and foundational course, and the course that I was teaching and still teach, you know, to groups. So then I have the remote, you know, influencing, remote viewing, remote healing courses. And now, which I've always wanted to do for a long time, because I always talk to people about, you know, they would ask me, you know, what's next after intuition? And I'm like, well, it's the past life stuff. And they'd be like blown away. And they were like, oh, you're crazy. And then they come back, you know, after dwelling on it for a little bit, and they're like, you know, you're right. And can you help me? And I was like, yeah, here, do this, do that, you know. And then they're like, often all these past lifetimes. I'm like, wow, that's cool. Right. So I finally was like, okay, I need to do a course for that. So that's what that one is, my newest course. And then I have courses. I know it's going to be good for you. I know you're going to love it. So, so then there's I have stuff on diet and nutrition. That's kind of specific for people that are into that. And I want to make more courses for that. And that's coming within the next few weeks on diet and nutrition. And so, yeah, the remote influencing stuff. I also have, like, when I taught with you guys, I rolled that information into like advanced course, because when I saw your group, I'm like, wow, these guys are advanced. I'm glad I got to spend a couple of days with you guys, because I had designed my course for like a kind of a basic level, and when I saw how advanced you guys were, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna hit them up, you know. So it was
a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really was for me too. And so what was great was Matthew and Sabrina basically offered that video that I could use, you know, to make a course out of. And that was one of the
nice.
When you come, you know, teach, and we'll give you that video. I'm like, oh, great. That's because I've been wanting to do this advanced course like this. Because a lot of the stuff that I taught you guys, you know, when I had you come up and I was doing the muscle testing, stuff like that, that's something I talk about, but I couldn't show it. And that's a really integral part of understanding,
Right.
remote influencing and how that affects you. So you guys get to see that remote influence is real. Your thoughts are like make a difference. So for people to see that, and I've done that with groups, for a long time, and with my SEAL buddies and CIA buddies and stuff like that, it really, really impacted them. Because when you can physically see, these things are real, your thoughts are real and have an effect on your environment and on your body, then it completely changes you from that point on. So that was great being able to have that. So that advanced course is in there too. So a lot of good material, and I'm just that's where my focus is right now, just building that material. And I can't wait to get out and get with Matthew and Sabrina again, and some other people, and then start teaching. So we're kind of like going to team teach in the future. So
are we still planning a Shasta trip?
Yes, that is hugely in our focus, and they're always Sabrina's always asking me, it's like, when do you see us doing it? I'm like, it's going to be like it's summertime, I believe. So hopefully, yeah. I see it, but it's up to California, the California governor Newsom, whether we're going to do that or not, unfortunately. But
right.
I think I always thought we could have done it in the time frame that we had it, initially scheduled for. But things happen.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah. What's the biggest difference between remote viewing and remote influencing?
That's an excellent question. So remote viewing is basically you're sending your consciousness out, like your imagination, like we talked about, and you're looking at stuff. At first, for me, it was just real simple stuff. Like I was on a bike path, and I was like, where am I going to see the next biker? And I would see it in my mind, and then I would see the biker there. And then I started to do it with cars. What's the next car I'm going to see? So you just kind of play these mind games. You start to get really good with it. You go out in the wilderness and like, okay, what I'm going to see on the path up ahead, and I would see it, So you're like, okay, this stuff is real. So you play with it. It's like working a muscle. You get that muscle better and better and better. And then eventually I went into combat zones, and I was like, okay, we're going to like go out on this road here in about 15 minutes. What's going on that road? And I'm like, oh no, we can't do that. I got to delay my group. And then there'd be a big boom right when we're supposed to be out there. And people would die, unfortunately, of course. But that would have been, that was really, I knew was designed for us specifically. But they got another target and they hit it. So so I started getting really good at that. So that's remote viewing. And you can do that with past lifetimes too, as you're going to find out. So my next lecture that I do, in the one you just got, will be remote viewing. So kind of like what Matthew was teaching, where you kind of go up and you like look at your life or stuff. It's just that way in a past life. Yeah. So I was doing that, and when Matthew was like, do it in this life, I'm like, oh, freaking brilliant. It's amazing. So so you do that. So that's remote viewing. So it can go up and down the timeline, up and down it. So I was doing it on the timeline, just a little bit. And then I started pushing it into, weeks and months ahead. And I'm like, why don't I do that in the past? So all my past lifetimes, I started doing, I would find a past lifetime and then a remote view of it. So that was like huge. Like, wow, time there's no factor here. Now,
and everything's just one mind. I mean, it's just
beautiful
openness.
That's right. Absolutely. So you're connected with all there is. Now on that, I'll give you a caveat on that. There's some things that we're not supposed to know. So you're not everything's going to be revealed to you, because there are things that you might have to develop in this lifetime that if you found that you did something in another lifetime, it would like screw up your development in this lifetime. So I understand that. And the same thing with me looking at stuff, bad stuff sometimes. So I can know things, and some things I'm just like, okay, if it has to do with this kind of stuff, I don't want to know it. So because there's really disturbing stuff out there. So you got to be careful with that, because you'll screw up your consciousness if you see some of the bad stuff that's out there. So
So how do you protect yourself from that? Do
you just like we talked about,
the golden
that's one way, and I'll talk about the influencing here of using that.
Okay.
But as far as remote viewing, it's you tell your consciousness what you want to see. So if there's something else there, you're not going to see it. So you kind of program in what you want to see.
I got
Now,
you.
you can keep it open and go, and if there's anything else that I need to know about in this category, then reveal it to me. But if there's like, some ultra top secret, type information where I can get myself in trouble if I find it out, they'll know that I know it and they'll kill me. I don't want to know,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So
Pass.
you won't see that because they know what you know. There's levels of consciousness that other people have just like you. And if you get in and snoop, they'll know. So you have to be a little careful. You don't just go in blind on some of this stuff. Because I used to see terrorists and their demons on them and stuff like that. And at first, like, I'm gonna fight this demon, and that demon came at me. And you don't fight demons because they're more powerful on that fight level than you are. So I send them love. So just like you were saying, I protect myself in a love bubble when I go out to do this remote viewing. And when I look at something, I look at it from a distance and look at it in the thought of love. So love is the most powerful force in the universe. So anything that's on a lower consciousness level than that won't affect you. So that's something, it's a little bit higher maybe for some people to grasp, but just understand that. So now on the remote influences, anyone that's a remote viewer says the next step is remote influencing. All the top remote viewers, Ed Dames and all these other guys will say, yeah, remote influence. You can remote influence. That's the next level. So that's what I teach. I teach, remote viewing and then remote influencing. Remote influence can be learned without even knowing remote viewing. You can do remote influencing right now. Every one of us do it to a certain extent. And just like you guys were learning in that thing where I was doing the muscle testing with you, you're like, okay, if I hold the thought of anger, of fear, it makes me weak. So then I can be affected by coronavirus or, bad people trying to control me. So they will have control of me. So once you understand that, and you understand that when you're in those lower levels of consciousness, that it makes you more effective, you're like, I'm not going to go there. That's dumb to go there.
Right.
I feel fear coming on, just let it go through me, and then focus on love. So when you remote influence, you are basically sending out waves of influence from your thoughts. So if, for instance, I would come into a town and I knew attacks were coming, and I would send out this wave of love energy. Now it started at a very basic level from the car that I was in, the house that I was in, and then eventually the little area that I was in. And then I got it, well, I don't do the whole city. So I started doing the whole city, and the whole city was safe while I was there. And it, reinforced itself to me when I would leave a city, and within hours after I left, there'd be attacks in it.
Wow.
And I'd been there for like, 12, 15, 16 days, whatever, in this one particular city. And they're like, all the CIA officers, and there were a lot of them in this one group that I was in. They're like, we don't know what's going on here, because there were attacks every day up to the day that I got there. And so they were saying, we don't know why we aren't being attacked, because we're getting intel that they're coming, and it's like, and so some of the guys that knew what I did, they'd look over at me like, and smile, and I'm like, yeah, don't say anything. So people don't need to know this, because they were literally screw it up.
Right.
I was with groups of people that they knew that I was doing this. And I had one guy say, oh, you're sending out, I'm going to go pay somebody to blow us up. I'm like, what? And sure enough, there was an explosion that afternoon after he said that to me. But fortunately, it was somebody that went out, instead of explosives, they took a tank of propane gas and lit it so it would blow up. But it wasn't a terrorist attack. And so I looked at them, I was like, see? And they're like, because I told them, hey, don't ever do that. Yeah. So you have to be very careful with who you tell this information to, because they'll do stupid stuff like that. And sometimes not intending, because I was teaching a guy remote viewing, and he was doing really good. So I hadn't really taught him remote influencing yet, but he knew that I was doing it. And another SEAL, really, really good guy. I wrote children's books and all kind of stuff. I mean, really, really good dude. And so I'm teaching him remote viewing, and I'm like, yeah, you're getting this. That's it. Because how cool is it? Instead of like, for me, you know, I had to get feedback from the universe when he's remote viewing. I'm like, I could see him remote view and connect. I'm like, you got it. And he's like, yeah, I got it. I felt it. I was like, good. You're right. You're on track. So there was a time. So there were no attacks in this town, even though they're telling us there are going to be attacks. And I was feeling an attack coming. So I'm sensing it, then I'm viewing it, and then I'm remote influencing it so it won't happen. So he's connecting. He's like, he looks at me, he goes, what's coming? And I'm like, do I tell him? You know, because same thing, if I tell somebody something, they can pull it in if they connect on it.
Because they're focusing on it. Yeah. Okay.
Good. So just like the stuff we've been talking about. So I'm like, it will be a good teaching thing. So I got that no, and then I was like, screw it. It'll be a good teaching thing. But I shouldn't have done it.
Oh.
And when I tell you the story, you're gonna be like, oh, Mike. But you know, I stop a lot of this stuff, and the one time I tell somebody and I learn from it.
Right.
So he's like, what's coming? And he was really insistent. He goes, what's coming, Mike? And I was like, well, I see an attack on a girls' school. And right when I said it, I knew I'd made a mistake because he had 2 little daughters.
Oh.
And it really emotional pull is extremely powerful.
Yes.
So he's like, damn, you know, he's like, oh no. It's like, but you gotta, before I told him, I said, but you got to like not focus on it. And he did. He focused on it. I'm like, so I like.
Well, it'd be kind of hard not to.
Yeah, well, when you learn
unless you're really experienced.
Yeah, exactly. So once I thought that he might be at that level, but he wasn't. And so I like really sent a lot of energy to it. I'm like, because one negative is like, it takes a lot of positive to overcome it. So I was like, oh man. So I'm sending the energy, trying to like, you know, turn it. I'm like, oh, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good, you know? And so we went, we were like training. It was a night training event we're at. And so we went back to the place where we're staying. Woke up the next morning, and on TV, there was like early that morning, a guy had drove a motorcycle that was packed, had a box on the back of it. And they do a lot of deliveries in the Middle East with boxes on the back on motorcycles. Mm-hmm. And they're like metal boxes. So he had driven up to this little girls' school and parked his motorcycle out front with his box packed with explosives, walked off and clicked it off and killed a bunch of little girls. So it's like, God, you know, so it's unfortunate, you know, it was a learning experience for me. And from that point on, I'm super careful with, you know, who and what I teach things to. But so when I say I'm like on a level like that's 100 times what I'm teaching, that's kind of what that is. So some of the stuff I teach is just basic level, but it's on a level that's like way past what anyone else is teaching. There's really not anybody teaching remote influencing on the level that I do it. It's very controlled. So you'll see a lot of these guys, former military guys, they do remote viewing, controlled remote viewing, controlled remote influencing. So what I teach is like, if you want to focus your consciousness on something, you can do it. If you want to focus your consciousness on creating a reality around you through remote influencing, you can do it. So that's, you know, what I teach. And if you take it and do negative with it, then you're going to suffer the consequences, because there is karmic, and the karmic wheel is like so fast now. If you do something good, it comes back to you very quickly now. And same thing with negative. So it seems like I see people do negative stuff, and something negative happens to them within the same day, and they're like, well, you know, what did I do to deserve this? And I'm like,
you've been doing or thinking something.
Yeah, a lot of times. So that's what when something negative happens to me, I'm real careful to like, do a review. Did I do something wrong here?
Right.
I don't beat myself up on it, but I'm like, okay, maybe my consciousness is not, on track, or if I'm not pulling in what I want to pull in, I just keep looking at, what I'm focused on, how I'm focused on it. And a lot of times I'll find that your focus is off, and you need to like stop doing what you're doing in this realm. And I'm like, and what's really cool is the life between life meditation that I did yesterday that I posted that you're going to listen to soon is what opened me up to this one other area that I was super having trouble with, and it just like broke open after that life meditation. So it's amazing, the information that comes from these higher dimensional realms, and I'm constantly amazed by it. I'm constantly impressed by it, and just staying open to it. Not because I'm still very analytical. I want the science behind it, and I want to do things like this, and it's just not that way. Sometimes you can get only so far with the consciousness like that. Now, when you open yourself up to these other levels of consciousness, these dimensional realms, these imaginative realms, if you want to call them those, then you allow yourself to advance much further than whatever it is you're working on. I don't care what it is in your life. If you're having sticking points, you just go into these levels of consciousness, and those sticking points just disappear like so quickly. It's amazing to me. And when I don't do it, I'm like, God, why do I have to keep learning this? But it's human nature. Can't keep up too much. But when you start to connect with it faster and faster and faster, you start to accomplish unbelievable things faster and faster and faster. So
Kind of like anything in life, stick with it and you just get better and better.
Yeah, and so many people just give up on stuff so easy. Most people are like that.
I do. That's one thing. I admit it. I mean, that's one thing I'm just in awe about you.
So
It's just you just amaze me. It's just the stuff that you've done in your life and your discipline, and it's just like, if I could just have a little piece of that, oh my, that's great.
You do have it. So it's just your inner standing is not at the point where mine is. And not to say that mine is like all that great. It's taken a lot of work. You wouldn't believe the kind of work that I've gone through to get to where I'm at. The trials and tribulations, and near death and all kind of crazy stuff. So it's something that I've always wanted. I wanted to be at this level of consciousness, even as a little boy. Kind of level of consciousness I've always wanted, and now I have it. I'm like, okay, what's next? I want more. Because there's never a limit. It just amazes me. And when I reach a point that I've always wanted to achieve, it's not that I'm like, oh, that's disappointing. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. So grateful. What's next?
Right.
And I, after being in bliss for a few days, it's like the next challenge is on. So
yeah.
And that's just the way my consciousness works. I'm always striving for something else. And if we live in bliss too long, it's just like it seems like we get hit harder. It's like, get up off the couch and get going.
Right.
And that's kind of what humanity's going through right now. We've been getting the grapes put in our mouth for too long. It's like sitting back on the couch and somebody fanning us, and that's all gone now. It's like, okay.
That is kind of true, though, if you think about it. We've been coasting for a long time.
Oh, humanity definitely has. So, and when you coast like that, then the dark side takes advantage of that. It's like, oh, you don't mind if we take away your gun rights? Okay, we'll do that.
Yeah.
And on and on and on. So it's a little frustrating because those of us that are a little bit more awake, I guess, see it happening. We try and help other people see it, but it's it's too easy sometimes for people to just like coast. So now pretty much no one's coasting anymore. So we're all having to wake up, and I think it's a beautiful thing. Even though I'm still frustrated by it, I still see the manipulation very clear to me. but it is a beautiful thing because I see that people are like, oh wow, this is really bad. You know, all these conspiracy theory things they're not conspiracy theories, they're facts. You know, they just try and tell us that it's, you know, a conspiracy theory. And that's something to
Wasn't
control. Even that
what
word.
wasn't the term conspiracy theory, wasn't that made up by somebody in the CIA or something as a
Absolutely, yeah. I was about to
yeah.
bring. See, we're communicating.
Yeah.
About to say that, and so that was it did come out of the CIA during the time frame where they're trying to, you know, manipulate the consciousness. So they wanted to make how can we, you know, make people feel bad about, you know, actually doing their
Knowing
own,
it.
you know, observation and doing their own research. You know, we'll make them into conspiracy theories, and that'll be a negative thing, and no one will want to be that. So.
Yeah.
And I'm not a
Amazing.
conspiracy theorist. I just look at things and I'm like, "Look, that." I had this one guy that I work with. He's from Tennessee. He was an officer, really good guy. And he had this one saying. He's like, "That dog don't bark." And I'm like, you know, I'll think that in my mind. I'm like, oh, you know, John, if you were here, you'd be saying that about, you know, the CIA doing this or doing that.
Yeah.
Although, you know, after having worked in the CIA for, you know, all those years, I saw the negative manipulations that they're doing. And although most of us, I'd say like 90% of us are really good people trying to do good things, there was that percentage that are doing some evil stuff on the other side, you know, and manipulating and so forth. And, you know, once you see that, you're like, oh my God, that stuff is true, you know,
Right.
but I can't talk about it because I'm in this organization. I'll go to jail if I say anything, but I'm not
Right.
now.
So what do you say to the people that just kind of like, oh, that's negative. I don't want to go there. I don't want any negativity around me. I mean, to me, I want to be informed
It's
and know what's going on.
it's extremely important to be informed right now because if you're in, like we talked about, you can focus on the thing that you want to, you know, bring about. You can be all in positive all the time, whereas all around you the world's burning. You know, it's like you're in your little house and, you know, everything's positive here. I got my crystals, I got my, you know, everything's nice woods, and, you know, sounds from, you know, Sophigeo, and, you know, all the, you know, everything's perfect. And, you know, there's a forest fire burning all around you. So that's basically the way a lot of the world is right now. So you have to become aware of it so that it doesn't, you know, burn you with everything else. So you can't stay in that, you know, level of denial, you know, and be in your own little bubble.
Mhm.
So what I teach is, and Matthew does an excellent job of it too, is you have to become aware of things in your life that are causing problems. And that's the deep state, some of these, you know, political
Right.
problems. So they're causing, you know, some serious problems for us right now with the, you know, bioweapon, coronavirus bioweapon, and so forth. So once you start to understand that, and you stop believing the lies are being said that, oh, it's a, you know, conspiracy theory. No, it's you know, there's evidence out there, scientific evidence that it is, you know, manipulated information
Mhm.
genetically and all that kind of stuff. So then you start to go, no more of that. So it's like you become aware of it, you say no more of that, and then you go into that love consciousness thing, because that's what I would do with the terrorists. So we looked for bin Laden for a long time, and got pretty good at, like, you know, finding where those guys were. And they thought he was in one area, and I was like, I don't feel it there. So then I remote viewed it, and I was like, okay, I know where he's at in the general area. And then I looked at, you know, well, is he really bad? You know, maybe they're just creating a bad guy, you know, just to have a bad guy to, like, you know, we're all focused on it. And sure enough, he was a bad guy. He had a demon on him. And so I just started sending love. So I became, you know, aware of it. I'm like, no more of this. And I started sending love. So the love energy, like we talked about, is the most powerful force in the universe. So when you start to, you know, use that energy, which is, you know, everywhere, there's, it's not like gold. There's only so much of it, you know. It's unbelievably abundant. It will never be exhausted. So you can use this love energy to, you know, create things in your life and so forth, and create, you know, an environment where we can all go to that will never have this kind of stuff anymore. So that's where we're at in life right now. So people are having to look. You're having to look at it because you're isolated. So, oh, there's a problem.
Yeah.
can't be in La La Land. So you could be in La La Land before, but not anymore. So now there is a problem. You're having to face it. So you're having to look at it. And how you look at it is very important going forward, because if you don't use your observational skills, you don't use your intuition and look at this stuff, because there's information on both sides of this. There's negative and there's positive.
Mhm.
So the guys that are negative will try and present it as a positive. So you have to be aware that they manipulate truths. So you need to find the real truths. And when that saying, the truth will set you free. So when you find those truths, you just know it. It's like that intuitive thing. Like, I just know this. So you find those truths.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to have intuition in your life right now, because that's where we're going. Every one of
You
us.
can feel it in the body. It's like,
Yeah.
and it might be something bizarre. It's like, that feels right.
Yeah, and that's what I was teaching you guys about that feel where, you could focus on something, or I could like manipulate your energy fields and you're weak. And that's what that's what they do. They send us all kind of information and 5G us and all that kind of stuff to make us weak so that they can have influence over us. So that's a lot of things that are going on. So, for a long time, there was a lot of people saying the 5G towers, there's no coronavirus, it's the 5G towers. It's like, no, the 5G towers are definitely, can create a different vibration frequency that we're not, accustomed to yet. Just like back in 1918, that's when they first started having radio. So back in 1918, when they had the pandemic back then, they just started having radio. So it made us weaker. Every pandemic that we've had, SARS, so forth, that's when we had 3G and then 4G. So all these different frequencies keep coming out that affect us, make us kind of throw us off a little bit, but eventually we adapt. So that's what's happening right now with 5G. And that's one of the reasons why they're rolling out like crazy all over the world, because they want to have this influence before we get to the point where we start to overcome this virus. So a lot of us are at the point where we've already built immunities. I think there's a huge amount of people that have already built immunities to the virus and might have been just barely affected by it. And some people, of course, unfortunately have had, severe, problems with it, but they built the immunity as well.
Right.
A very small percentage don't. And a lot of times they already have complications. So they already have a weakened immune system. So the 5G, does have an effect on weakening our immune system. So that's why they want to roll it out so fast, so heavy, and then say, look, this coronavirus is like destroying humanity. You have to like self-isolate. And we're like, no, it's really not doing that. There's demonstrations going all over the place because people are finally waking up.
Right.
So you have that point where you're like, enough. We're going to start to demonstrate. And then more and more of us are going to start to demonstrate. And then we're going to get to the point where like, hey, we're going to get our freedoms back. And some of the states are already starting to do that. Some of the more, open-minded states and aren't easily controlled, unfortunately, for the state. But we're seeing this all over the world where people are waking up to it. So it's that kind of like a three-step process where you notice the problem, you say no more, and then you start to send it love and do the things that you need to do to stop it.
That's perfect. That's what we should do right there.
Absolutely. And
you do that every night too. And I want to tell everybody about your awesome your meeting room every night. I join in. I think I've only missed a couple when I went to visit my mom. If I don't see them, I'm like, what's going on? It's fantastic. And your meditation at the end of the night's fantastic.
In there, thank you very much. That's when you lend your energy to something, it's the same thing. So as an individual in the SEAL teams, I was very powerful. But when I had like-minded guys come in, we could do, and we focus on something. Oh my God, the things we did were just like beyond amazing. So it's the same thing with this little group that we have going on in the YouTube, where we have our little meditation at the end of the night. It's super powerful. I felt the energy going out from that several times. It was like, wow, this is going to have a major impact on the world. And quite frankly, I think it has been. So I think the awakening process has been speeded up by people that not just from our little group of people that come in later. And there's
Hmm.
also, Debbie Wilcock is, doing stuff, and
Right.
a lot of other people are doing stuff. Um, Laura Eisenhower is a
Hmm.
great source. So there's a lot of people out there that are awake, and they're
Yes.
helping to inform people. And it's, I'm a little guy compared to those guys. They've been around quite a long time doing this stuff. So, but I feel like I'm on a level with them. So
Yeah.
it's fun, and a kind of a different level, coming at it from a different angle. Being a warrior, before, and so people can see, hey, this warrior guy can be like of the light. That's a good sign. And that's,
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's one of the things that I want to relay, that there are a lot of us like me. So
I think
most
so.
don't come out of it, don't come out, but for whatever reason, I was always, kind of impelled. It's been a process, because you're kind of informed, and you're kind of and when I say informed, it's like your consciousness is informed not to disclose anything about what you are, what you've done, anything like that. So learning how to overcome that was a great challenge for me. And there's a lot of difficulty for guys like me to come out and talk like this. So to overcome that was huge. So I know that it's kind of like we just said, it's important for other people to see that
Hmm.
there are guys like me that have these abilities, and that are trying to help humanity. There's a lot of guys that I used to work with that are like this, but they haven't overcome the issues with coming out and talking like this. So it's good.
Right. Right. Well, I certainly feel blessed that I met you and came into your life, and it's been, and Matthew David, it's just,
Hmm.
my life has definitely changed for the better. So
Oh,
we
that's good.
just have to keep spreading it to other people. And
Yeah, and look at your work. I mean, you're coming out to spread this information too. We're all, like I said, we're like this team. It's like this, like a
yeah,
team. We're a consciousness team. So we're out there, helping each other out, supporting each other, and spreading this information. It's huge. So some people are going to be, motivated by what you're talking about, and maybe they'll take up the message too. Or if nothing else, at least from this point on, when they see this kind of information, they'll be like, they'll be thinking about it, and that makes a huge difference.
it does.
Just the consciousness awareness rising has an impact on all of humanity. It's like I talk about to everyone. It's like, as the tide comes in, it lifts all boats. Your consciousness, as it rises, it lifts all boats, even those that aren't of this high consciousness that we're going into now. So they'll come along.
Doesn't the mass consciousness only have to be like a certain, like a third or something like that to bring? It's not very much, really. If I don't remember the exact percentage or numbers.
Really just 51%,
Yeah.
and it have to be 51% of the, humanity. It just has to be at that consciousness level. So some of us could be along like, 800-900 level on the consciousness scale, and that lifts all those that are all the way down at the 30, consciousness scale, that are in fear and anger and depression and stuff like that. It's going to still lift their consciousness level up. So they're going to start to notice those of us that are, at this consciousness level over a period of time. So it's they're like looking like, why aren't those guys in fear? What do they have going on? It's like, and then they start to pay attention a little bit more, and then they start to get into it. So it will have an effect to
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah. Michael, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Jamia. So it's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I love your little comments on my YouTube. Very sweet.
Yeah.
It's a good group, so I appreciate it.
It's
And
a great
I
group.
hope
Yeah.
this really goes out, influences a lot of people in a positive way, of course, and we get some good feedback, or you get some good feedback from it.
Yeah. All of us. All right. Well, I'm going to list your links in the description and send some people over and keep spreading the good news. No fear.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit, and
We did, didn't we? I don't even know how long we've been.
yeah, it's been quite a while. I mean, it's kind of like that, you get timeless when you get into some of this information,
It
so it's
is.
beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Well,
We
thank you.
went longer this time. I think we covered a lot more, so it was a good thing, right?
Yeah, I was going to mention though too that I love the connection that you have with your wife, but that's okay. We can maybe cover that another time.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I'll see you at 9 o'clock tonight.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. Bye-bye.
Lots of love.